Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. Today's video is going to be my common, uncommon, and rare chase list for Kaldheim, so let's get into it. I'm going to start with the rares, and the first of the rares, as I've got these alphabetically, is Cosmos Charger. Cosmos Charger is a 15 mana horse spirit creature. It's a 4/4. It has the new Foretell mechanic, Flash and Flying. And when this creature enters the battlefield, your Foretold tokens lose 1 shield. When an opponent support is destroyed, your Foretold tokens are going to lose a shield. And then if this card was not Foretold, this creature gets +2/+2 and gains haste. So the reason why I like the Cosmos Charger is just that Foretold, or really Foretell, is kind of a tricky mechanic, honestly. So now that the set is out, I'm making this one after the set has already aired and I've gotten a chance to see some of these cards in action. Foretell is a really tricky mechanic to play around, and it absolutely needs something like Cosmos Charger to be able to work. You're not realistically going to be able to destroy your Foretell tokens reliably without having something that's lowering their shields or destroying them. And the Cosmos Charger is something that, if paired with a flicker mechanic like Thassa, you can try and have it enter the battlefield every single turn and make it so that all of the tokens lose a shield per turn. So I like this just because it's a way of enabling the Foretell mechanic to work. Next, we've got the first of our sagas, and this is going to be Firja's Retribution. And so we're going to take a look at chapters 1, 2, and 3. But chapter 1 is going to create a Vigilant Angel token. That's going to be a 4/4 flying Vigilant token. Then when it moves on to chapter 2, when an angel creature you control attacks, destroy the first opposing creature with power less than this creature's. This is a really cool ability for a number of reasons, but primarily that, let's say that you have 3 angels down on the battlefield, each of those angels is going to trigger this ability to potentially destroy the opposing first creature with power less than the creature's. So angels tend to have fairly large attack power in the first place, and so this gives us a way of getting rid of some of our opponent's stuff. So I like removal very much. And then finally, chapter 3 is going to make it so that your angel creatures gain double strike until end of turn. Double strike is an absolutely fantastic mechanic for finishing your opponent off. So not only here are we going to be getting an angel token, but then we're going to make it so that our angels, like all of them, are going to potentially get rid of our opponent's creatures, and then we're going to be swinging in for bonus damage. So at 14 mana, this card is definitely going to be a bit expensive, and it's not a card that you're necessarily going to want to throw into all your decks. But when the new mono-white Angel Planeswalker comes out, I could see this being a very reliably good card in that deck. Gravenlore. So there's a lot of different snow cards, and now that we've had a chance to see snow a little bit, there's definitely a need for things that are going to enable a lot of snow gems. This is one of those ways. 8 mana to draw 3 cards is already solid, and then you're going to create 3 snow gems for every card that you draw that is a snow card. So if you're looking to be able to make a decent snow deck, this is a card that you're probably going to want to use, as any decent snow deck is probably also going to be running blue. So definitely a good card to keep your eye out for. Kaldheim the Rime Staff is going to be the first of the heralds on this list. So this is 9 mana for a support. It's got Mana Field, that new mechanic, where if you make a match to a gem that's adjacent to or on this support, you get the Mana Field ability. And the Mana Field ability is going to return the first snow card from your graveyard to your hand and give it X mana, where X is the number of snow gems. Even if we ignore what Jorn, God of Winter, does, this is still a pretty solid card because it's going to give you your snow cards back and give them mana, where that's equal to the number of snow gems. If we were to pair, say, Kaldheim the Rime Staff with Gravenlore from the previous page over here, let's say that you have a deck full of snow cards, Gravenlore is going to convert potentially up to 9 snow gems, and then if you make a match next to Kaldheim and the lore is that first card in your graveyard, you're going to get it back with full mana, be able to cast it again, and put even more snow gems out. So Kaldheim is nice in that if you have some of the snow spells, then it's going to make it so you can cast those spells a little bit more reliably and just get them back over and over again, which is pretty cool. The flip side is this right here. This is what Jorn, God of the Winter, or God of Winter, looks like. Jorn is a 5/5, and then while on the battlefield, your snow cards can't be disabled. So if you've ever, like, I don't know, felt any sort of frustration about a card like Hixus, this is very anti-Hixus. If your opponent has anything that's going to disable your stuff, it's not going to happen. If you want to do some fun, silly stuff on your own, let's say that you want to play a Colossification deck to give your critters +20/+20, then you don't have to worry about them being disabled because Jorn's going to make it so that doesn't happen. And then beyond that, when Jorn attacks, you're going to create X snow gems, where X is the number of snow cards you control. Then Jorn is going to get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is also going to be equal to the number of snow gems that X is also going to be equal to the number of snow cards you have. So this is not only a very solid first side, right, with Kaldheim, but then when you actually get Jorn down, Jorn is actually a very solid creature to have on the battlefield also, especially if you're looking to play a snow deck. So I do rather like both sides of this particular Herald. The next card is Realm Walker. I don't actively have a major thing for Realm Walker, but I am including it here just because I feel like there's going to be a lot of room for some funny shenanigans decks, just given that we have a Masterpiece support and a Mythic support that will both make additional copies of Realm Walker. And since Realm Walker on its own is going to make it so that it can potentially reinforce itself by drawing a creature as the first creature draw, or as the first draw of your turn, it's just, or of any turn really for that matter, right? So if you draw by playing something with Flash on your opponent's turn, that can trigger this too. But nonetheless, I feel like this is just a card that's more of interesting. It's not a card that you need to have by any means, but it could be a card that you have some fun with as you're tinkering around with different stuff in the set. Reckless Crew is definitely a cool card. It's not like a super powerful card, but it's a cool card. So this is 11 mana. It's going to create X dwarf tokens. Dwarf tokens are now 2/1s. X is going to ultimately be the number of equipment cards and vehicle cards you control, including the reinforcements up to 10. Then each equipment card in your hand gains X mana. So we have quite a few good equipment cards now, especially with our getting 2 more mythic equipment from the new Heralds, being Halvar and then the red one. But there's definitely a lot of really playable equipment cards in Standard on the whole. And so if you're using Reckless Crew, then you're going to be able to get a whole bunch of little dwarfs down. You're going to be able to equip all the dwarfs with mana. Yes, I'm calling them dwarfs. I just like calling dwarves dwarfs. But you're going to be able to get a bunch of equipment down. You're going to be able to give the equipment in your hand more mana. So this is another one of those cards that's going to be fun. It's going to be a pretty cool card. It's definitely not overcosted, that you could get quite a lot of power out of by getting potentially a 20/10 out of playing all these dwarfs if you have enough vehicles and equipment reinforcements. But it's definitely not an overpowered card, but it's just going to be a fun card to have. Runeforge Champion. All right, this is probably the champion of the rares, honestly. No, the squirrel. Okay, this is one of the champions of the rares. So this is one of the ones that you absolutely want to keep an eye out for, like big time. This is a fantastic card. So this is 11 mana for a 4/5. When this creature enters the battlefield, fetch the first aura card from your library. At the beginning of your turn, the first aura card in your hand gains full mana. So this is like crazy levels of awesome, because there are a lot of really strong auras in the game right now, be it at the uncommon range with cards like Staggering Insight, or all the way up to the Masterpiece range with Chromanticore. But nonetheless, you could stack a whole bunch of different really powerful auras in your deck. Maybe include some of the better creatures that have heroic, or creatures that just want to have a larger a larger power anyways. And then you play Runeforge Champion, which is going to fetch you and give you your auras full mana. So if you've got like decent card draw in your deck, just the Runeforge Champion is going to be giving a card in your hand every turn full mana. And so you can run things like Chromanticore and not be held back by the 20 mana cost, which might otherwise be a little bit on the prohibitive side. So Runeforge Champion is definitely a very powerful card. You definitely want to keep your eyes out for this, pretty much regardless of what your collection size is, because there are a lot of really good white auras. Ruthless Winnower. This is 15 for a 5/5. At the beginning of each player's turn, the first reinforced non-token, non-elf creature that players controls loses a reinforcement, and if they can't, destroy the first non-token, non-elf creature that player controls. So this is a creature that's going to be providing removal at the beginning of each player's turn, right? Like, it's fantastic, because if you're using this card, you're probably using it in an elf deck anyways. And so you're able to start getting rid of stuff. Or even if you want, right? If you have an objective where you need to lose X or more creatures, or you need to destroy some number of creatures, you could use this and you could get rid of some of your own creatures to count toward objectives also. So Ruthless Winnower is an absolutely fantastic card. It's definitely a card that you're going to want to go ahead and keep your eye out for. However, that being said, this is going to be one of the exclusives. So this is a card that you would have to buy as part of the elf kit with the mythic elf. So you're not going to be able to pull this one in packs while this is the major primary set in standard. Sage of the Beyond. So I hate the art for this card so much. This is like one of the ugliest cards I've ever seen. Like, I mean, the derp level on this is just over 9,000. It's horrible. But it's still a very useful card for Foretold. So it's 19 mana for a 7/7. At the beginning of your turn, all of your Foretold supports are going to lose a shield. So unlike the Charger from the beginning of the video, this thing is actually going to be doing it no matter what every turn. It being removing shields from your Foretold supports. However, the added bonus is that you don't need another card to make it so this enters the battlefield every turn. It's just going to go ahead and do that for you. And then if this card here itself is Foretold, then when the creature enters the battlefield, you're going to destroy a Foretold token that you control. So this thing does come onto the board with 6 shields, which is definitely excessive. You're going to have a hard time getting this thing down without destroying your supports. But if you're playing a Foretold deck reasonably, you're probably going to be running some other things that are going to destroy your supports anyways. So this is another card that's going to be an exclusive, so you would have to pick it up in one of the exclusive bundles. So just keep that in mind. Search for Glory. This is another one of our snow spells. This one is 9 mana. You're going to pick one of the first 4 different non-spell snow or historic cards from your library, fetch that card, and then if this card gains snow mana, you're going to gain X life. X is the number of snow gems. And when you cast this card, create 5 snow gems. So basically, when you're filling this card up with mana, if you have made a match that has snow mana, then this is going to get that extra effect to gain life, where X is going to be the number of snow gems. You can get quite a lot of snow gems on the battlefield, so this can really give you quite a good amount of life. And then on top of that, it is going to give you fetch. The downside to this is that you're fetching things, but you're not actually going to be giving it mana. You're just fetching it. So this is sort of like a pro and con sort of situation. But nonetheless, it's still worth having. It's still worth keeping an eye out for. This is still a card that I definitely would want to pull. Yeah, good card. Sigrid, God Favored. I'm probably saying this wrong. It's like Sigrid or something, or I don't know. These Norse names, they just don't work for me. Not that like I have any problem with them. I do in pronouncing them. That's the problem, right? So this is 8 mana for a 4/4. She has Flash and First Strike. And nope, you're not going to make a joke about her flashing people. So as long as your opponent controls a god card, this creature gains protection from your opponent's planeswalker colors. Man, she would have like protection from Zeus. No, we're not going there, man. Just keep going. When this creature enters the battlefield, exile an opposing legendary support. If you can't, exile the first opposing legendary creature. So this card is really, really good. And it's really, really good for a number of reasons. One, the Herald cards, at least, to me right now, seem like the strongest cards in the set. And so not only is she going to have protection from your opponent's planeswalker colors if you have her down and they do get one of the gods down, but on top of that, when this creature enters the battlefield, you're going to exile an opposing legendary support that's going to get rid of all the Herald supports. And then if you can't, you're going to exile the first opposing legendary creature. So if you run this with, say, once again, I know I bring her up a lot, but Thassa, and you're going to be flickering this card every turn, then you're going to make it so that if your opponent is running a Herald deck, or at least cards with Herald, which if you're in Platinum, as this set is out for longer, you're going to start seeing a lot of them, especially the Prismatic Bridge. That card is busted. This is going to be a direct counter to that. And if you have a way of making it so this enters the battlefield every turn, you're going to be able to really neuter a lot of the stronger decks that you're going to be seeing in Standard. So this is a card that you definitely want to keep your eyes out for. It's not a card that's necessarily going to be amazing in every single deck, because not every single deck is going to be running legendary creatures, but many, if not most of them, are going to be running legendary creatures, because a lot of the top creatures in Standard right now are indeed legendary. So this is an absolutely fantastic card. Keep your eyes out for Sigrid. Throne of Death. This is going to be another one of our Herald cards. So this is going to be an 8 mana support, and you're going to get, at the beginning of your turn, destroy the top 3 cards of your library. It's going to activate 4 gems to exile the first creature card from your graveyard and draw a card. Now, I don't particularly like that the activate ability exiles a creature, but I do like that this is a way of destroying cards or milling them every single turn. That is definitely solid. Now, the flip side, Aegon, God of Death, you'll see up here on the side, is going to be an 8/8, and it has, at the beginning of your turn, exile the first 2 cards from your graveyard. If you can't, destroy this creature, draw a card, and give it full mana. So, because the support is going to be milling 3 cards per turn, you're probably going to be able to exile the first 2 cards from your graveyard every turn, and that's going to be a really non-issue sort of dealio. The cool thing that you can do with this is that if, let's say that you're playing a deck that has black and foretell, then you can have the foretell creatures and other things get exiled, and then because of the way that Aegon and then the throne are going to work, then those cards that are getting exiled are just going to come onto the battlefield as supports that you can ultimately try and play. However, that being said, foretell is not a particularly strong mechanic, so it's not necessarily something that I'm saying that you should do, but nonetheless, it's still a really cool interaction between the 2 cards, and I'm sure that you can have some pretty good fun using the 2 of them. This brings us to Toski, Bearer of Secrets. This is maybe the strongest rare in the set. I don't have this one yet at the time of my recording this video, but when I do get it, I will absolutely be making a video on it. This card is just absolutely bonkers levels of good, guys. So this is 14 mana for a 1/1. It has prevent damage. It's a legendary creature. It's a legendary squirrel. And it has unblockable. So this card can't have its mana drained or raised. It can't block. No big deal. But whenever any creature you control deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, you draw a card, and then it gains X mana, where X is equal to Toski's power. So let's say that you've got 3 creatures down on the battlefield. Ignore the power of the other 2 creatures that you have on the battlefield, and you use different card effects to buff Toski, which is really not going to be very difficult at all. Let's pretend for a moment that we've used Colossification on Toski, because I think that sounds kind of fun, using Colossification on a squirrel. Toski is going to become a 21/21. So now when Toski and the other 2 cards that you control are going to be attacking your opponent, you're going to be drawing effectively 3 cards, and each of those 3 cards are going to gain 21 mana. So Toski is an absolutely phenomenal card. It gives green card draw, and it doesn't just give it like mediocre card draw, it gives it card draw with an absolutely ridiculous amount of mana. Whew, I just realized I'm talking really quickly. I'm going to slow that down a quick step. But yes, Toski is very good. If you get this card, you absolutely should try it out. It is phenomenal. One of, if not the best rares in the set. This brings us to Tundra Fumarole. This is going to be the red snow spell rare. It's going to deal 6 damage to any opposing target. That could be a creature or a planeswalker. Then create 5 snow gems. And if this card gained snow mana, gain 4 loyalty. So this is actually like a phenomenal card all around. You could use it as removal. You could use it as direct damage. You could use it to gain loyalty. So all of those are really nice. If you use it with the Rhyme Staff, you can just try to keep playing it over and over again to just keep dealing damage, keep putting out snow gems, keep getting loyalty. So I really like the Tundra Fumarole. This brings us to Valkyrie Harbinger. So Valkyrie Harbinger is going to be another exclusive. And so Valkyrie Harbinger is 16 mana for a 6/7 with lifelink, which is already okay. And then at the end of each player's turn, yours and your opponent's, if you have full life, create a Vigilant Angel token. I like this just because it's going to have the potential to play 2 angel tokens per turn. If you're familiar with the vehicle Parhelion or whatever it was called, right? I think it was Parhelion. Parhelion the second. That one wound up making 2 angel tokens every time it attacked. It was a pretty strong card, and this is going to be similar level of strength. So this is definitely worth keeping an eye on. That does it for the rares. So let's go ahead and check out some of the commons and uncommons.
So for our uncommons, most of them are going to be cards that are going to be better for newer players, but still there are a few that definitely everyone will want to keep their eyes out for and try to make sure that they add to their collection. So Aegar, the Freezing Flame, is one of those cards that's going to be better for newer players. So this is a 4/4 for 10. When an opposing creature is dealt non-combat damage, if you control a giant or a wizard, draw a card. Now, as this is both a giant and a wizard, you're going to be controlling one, and you are going to be drawing a card. That card is going to gain X mana, where X is equal to the damage dealt that way. This effect can trigger up to 2 times per turn. So there are a lot of ways that you can deal non-combat damage. Non-combat damage tends to be things like direct damage from spells. So if you were to cast a spell that does like 6 damage to each opposing creature, for example, then if your opponent had 2 creatures down, you would draw 2 cards, and each of those cards would gain 6 mana. So this is a solid card for newer players for red burn decks. Bark Channel Pathway is going to be the first of the new pathways. The pathways in general are just solid lands to have in your decks. I don't personally get a lot of use out of them because I run pure monocolor conversion, but I know that there are some really cool things that you can do by having many pathways in your deck and getting many lands. There are some new cards that benefit from having more lands in play, and so for those, it's really cool to be running the pathways because they count as 2 lands for 1 card in your deck. So Bark Channel is just another one of the pathways, definitely worth having. Binding the Old Gods is one of my favorite cards in the set. It allows mono green to be a relevant color again. And it allows mono green to become a relevant color again because it gives mono green a way of destroying creatures. It gives us fairly reliable removal. So this is a saga. It's got 3 chapters. And the first of the chapters is going to say when the support enters the board, destroy the last opposing creature. If you can't, destroy an opposing non-land support. This effect can affect vanguards. So I really like that this first prioritizes creatures, and then if they don't have creatures, it doesn't matter. You can still go ahead and play this as support removal too. So this is definitely solid. The second ability is going to fetch the first land support from your library and put that directly onto the battlefield under your control. So chapters 1 and 2 are pretty excellent. It's kind of like a death sprout in a way, except that it's not all happening in one turn. And then finally, chapter 3 is going to give all of your creatures Berserker and Death Touch until end of turn. So if your opponent has any creatures out and you have creatures out, then you're going to be attacking your opponent's creatures and you're going to be destroying them, which is also pretty solid, especially if, say, you play chapter 1, you play it for chapter 1, your opponent has a creature down, you destroy the creature. You're going to have to wait until this thing has exceeded the 3 chapters to be able to play a new one to destroy an opposing creature. So having the 3rd chapter make it so that you can still go ahead and have a way to remove your opponent's creatures definitely makes this card more viable. This definitely is not as good as Death Sprout, and it's not necessarily good enough to make green, mono green, like the end-all be-all best mono color, because it's just not as reliable. Like if it was just an 11 mana card that had the first ability, I think that would, but because it doesn't, it's not quite enough removal. Nonetheless, it's still a very good card. You absolutely want to have this card in your collection, and if you do have it, you should try putting it to use. It's phenomenal. Blightstep Pathway is another one of our pathways. I just love the art on these, though. Like, I like to just stop and look at the art on a lot of the Magic cards, as it's one of the things that I personally love about Magic. I love the art on the cards. Cosmos Elixir. This is a card that is very good for new players and for people with like middling collections. Those of you who have larger collections, there's still going to be uses for this card too, because it's colorless and it provides you with card draw every turn, potentially. So it's an 11 mana artifact, and at the beginning of your turn, if you have full life, draw a card and give it half its mana. If you don't have full life, you gain 3 life. So this is imperfect because it's not guaranteed to draw you a card, but if you're at full life, this thing is going to set you up with an incredible amount of tempo because it's going to be drawing cards and giving them half mana every single turn. So you draw an extra card, get extra mana. That's a huge bonus. This is an absolutely amazing card to have, especially if you're playing like mono white that doesn't have very good access to card draw. So really cool card. Really, really cool. Darkboar Pathway is yet another one of our pathways. And once again, the art on these pathways is just so cool. Like, just this whole thing with the light going through the cavern there is... yeah, you want to have all the pathways, by the way. So if you're wondering, like, hey, why are you glossing over the pathways, man? It's because you want to have all of them. They're all good cards. Dual Strike. This card is definitely going to have, like, niche uses and be really cool for that niche use, right? So it's a 12 mana spell. It's got Flash and Foretell. And when you cast it, you copy the first spell card in your hand that costs 11 or less and give that copy full mana. So the card doesn't even need to have mana. You cast this, the next card gets a copy and full mana. So you can use this with like gem conversion to get extra gem conversion going. You can use this with Dead of Winter to just better guarantee that you're going to kill your opponent using something like Dead of Winter. There's a lot of different uses that you can put Dual Strike to. It's definitely a very good card that you're going to want to keep your eyes out for. And if ever you have an event where you need to be casting a bunch of different spells in a turn or something like that, this is a great choice for that type of objective. Fall of the Imposter is going to be another one of our sagas. This one really kind of only has two different chapters because chapters 1 and 2 are the same. They both are permanently buff any creature with +2/+2. That permanently buffing a creature +2/+2 admittedly isn't the greatest thing ever, but is definitely really fun to pair with something like Vorinclex, where it's just going to automatically go through all 3 chapters and then dump in the graveyard. So if you're running like Vorinclex, Starfield of Nyx, and this card, you're going to give Vorinclex every turn, or some other creature +4/+4, and then you're going to exile your opponent's first creature with the greatest power. So there's definitely some really cool like combos that you can use with this card. It's definitely got some useful synergy. And then also it's another card in green that is going to enable you to exile your opponent's creatures. So it gives you removal. You could use it in white too. So definitely solid. It's not like the best thing ever because it's a saga and so you have to wait to get to the exile. But still, if you're not heavy on removal, like if you don't have options like Ruinous Ultimatum or, like some of the better removal in standard, like this is a really good choice to have. Hengate Pathway is just another one of the pathways. So once again, definitely worth having. You want to have all the pathways. They're very good. Inga Rune Eyes. So I feel like there's a lot of sets where the set drops and like the first video I make is a mono blue Jace Unraveler of Secrets deck. And this card just so perfectly pairs with that Planeswalker that it's just wonderful. So it's 14 mana for a 4/4. It has Defender, so you do have to be careful for that. It will die very quickly. And then when this creature enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards. And then when this creature dies, the first 3 cards in your hand gain X mana. X is 1 plus the number of different creature cards in all graveyards. So all in all, this card is just phenomenal for everything it does. So if you're running Jace Unraveler and you get your third ability down, then you play this creature and you've got a 4/4 that's going to buff +12/+12, which means it's coming down as a 16/16 defender if you've got that third ability down. And not only would this be coming in as a 16/16 defender, but it would make it so that all of your other creatures would get that +12/+12 buff also for drawing the cards and getting +4/+4 per card drawn. And then if your opponent does indeed kill this thing, then the first 3 cards in your hand are going to be gaining mana, where it's going to be 1 plus the number of different creatures in all graveyards. This is going to die, so it's going to go in the graveyard. That means you're guaranteed to at least give 2 mana to each of those cards. But realistically speaking, there's probably going to be a number of cards in the graveyard, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can do that. So you can actually wind up giving a bunch of mana to the cards in your hand. And so not only will this serve as defense or maybe even amazing offense, but it can still provide you with tempo when it dies. So for you newer players, this is maybe the best uncommon in the set, in my opinion. It's really good. I used this in my video on the Prismatic Bridge as one of the staples in that deck for the blue Pauper deck, and it's a very, very, very good card. So that does it for the uncommons. This is the last one. Let's go ahead and check out the commons. For the commons, there really aren't too many to target. Basically, we've got a new land cycle, and so I'm going to be highlighting that. And then there's just a few little cards here and there to keep an eye out for. So we've got a brand new land cycle that's going to convert to a mono color. This land cycle is 2 more mana than the Throne of Eldraine mana cycle. That's a common. So it's going to cost 12 mana instead of 10 for each of the lands. They're all going to convert 2 to their color, but they've all got an additional bonus when they are destroyed. And all of those bonuses happen to be fairly decent bonuses also. So these are very much so playable cards. And so for those of you who are indeed newer players or don't actually have access to some of the rare or mythic lands, then this is going to be a land cycle that you need to get your hands on. So Axgard Armory is the white one, so it's 12 mana, converts 2 to white, and its when it's destroyed ability is to fetch the first aura or equipment card from your library and give it 3 mana. So Staggering Insight is a white aura. It's an uncommon, so it's on the easier side to get your hands on as cards in this game go, and is one of the best cards for newer players. So if you've got that, you can pair this with it, and that's going to start to form a pretty solid core for your deck. So I really like the white one. Cinderheart Giant is just a phenomenal card to throw into something like a Koth deck. Koth's mana bonus is just so high at level 60, and monocolor planeswalkers really aren't too hard to get to max level. So it makes it so that something like this is definitely usable. A 19 for a 7/6 with Berserker and Trample, and when it dies, deals 7 damage to the last opposing creature, is definitely a solid card. It's going to be killing your opponent's creatures as it attacks them. When it ultimately dies, it's going to be taking out another creature with it, probably. And so this might wind up taking out multiple creatures just for being on the battlefield, and with the trample, still do damage to your opponent's planeswalker. If you're running Koth, like I'm suggesting, then you get your third ability down, and this thing starts getting even bigger. If you find a way to give this thing first strike, you're in for a good time, as it's going to rampage through your opponent's side of the board. As commons go, this is a very good common to have. This is really just for newer players, but I really enjoy this card. I think it's quite good. Notvold Slumbermound is going to be the red version, or the red land in our new cycle. It looks like it's green. It looks like it should have been a green troll or something, but nope, it's a red one. And so it's going to convert 2 gems to red, and then when the support is destroyed, you're going to create a troll warrior token, then destroy an opposing land support. That's so good. You get 2 really good things out of that. That troll warrior token is, I think, a 6/6 defender, which is solid. And then destroying an opponent land support too. You get all of that, and you get gem conversion. Yes, please sign me up. This, like I said, the on destruction effects of these are really good. I don't like that they cost 12 mana instead of 10. If you're a newer player and you don't have your planeswalkers at level 60, it definitely makes these a lot harder to play. But if you're able to get both of the land cycles, both from Eldraine and these new ones from Kaldheim, and you put both of them in your deck, then it makes it so that you're just producing so much more mana. It's definitely worth having. Great Hall of Starnheim is going to be the black one. So this is going to be 12 mana to convert 2 to black. And when this one's destroyed, you create a 4/4 flying Vigilant Angel token. So the red one is definitely better than this one, but nonetheless it's still giving you black gem conversion, which is still solid. And then when it breaks, it's going to give you an angel token, which, depending on what else you're running, could be solid for sure too. So worth having. Port of Carfell is the blue one, and I really like the art of this one. I don't know. There's just something about snow. I really like snow. I think that must be it. I like snow. So this one's going to be converting 2 to blue for 12, and when this support is destroyed, destroy the top 4 cards of your library, then return the last creature from your graveyard to the battlefield under your control. So not only is this going to be converting gems to blue, but when this thing breaks, because you're converting gems, it's maybe going to break itself at some point, then you're going to be milling and then bringing something back from the graveyard to the battlefield. This is another one of those just phenomenal cards. So this land cycle, by the way, regardless of your collection, you're probably going to want to have all of these cards from the land cycle for the most part. Port of Carfell, the blue one, and then the white one are on the better side. The red one's pretty phenomenal too. Even if you don't want the troll token, destroying your opponent's lands is really good. But yeah. Shimmerdrift Veil is nice for just giving you a snow enabler if you don't have more of the major snow cards. It's only 6 mana, which is definitely reasonable. And at the beginning of your turn, you're going to create 2 snow gems, which is definitely solid. Snow doesn't really have a lot of outlets right now for you to be using your snow gems, apart from really big mythic and masterpiece cards. So if you wound up getting lucky and you picked up one of those cards and you don't have enough other snow enablers, at least this gives you a land option that's going to serve as a snow enabler, so you can use those cards. Skemfar Elderhall is going to be the green one, so the green land of the cycle. It's going to convert 2 to green for 12, and when this one's destroyed, you create 2 1/1 Elf Warrior tokens, and the first opposing creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Let's face it, this is probably the worst of the lands in the land cycle, just because, Nissa's Pilgrimage basically does this for 3 mana, and I really don't actively want the Elf Warrior tokens, and you're almost never going to kill something with that -2/-2 until end of turn. But nonetheless, it does indeed give you additional card draw. It does give you additional gem conversion. So if you don't already have something like Gingerbread Cabin, you will definitely have Nissa's Pilgrimage. You don't have something like Castle Garenbrig or any of the other green gem conversion. This does serve as extra gem conversion for you, which is definitely solid. You want to have all the gem conversion. And last but not least, we have Wither Crown. Wither Crown is a really cool card. It's a 12 mana support, it's an enchantment, and at the beginning of your opponent's turn, the base power of the first opposing creature becomes 1 until end of turn. So the base power becoming 1 doesn't mean that it's just the power is going to become 1. It's going to become 1 for every reinforcement it has. So if your opponent's playing a token deck and they've got 40 reinforcements of a token down, the token's still just going to be a 40/40, but nonetheless, 40 reinforcements means it'll be a 41/41, but whatever, that's beyond that. So this is still pretty phenomenal, because most of the decks that you're going to be running against aren't going to be doing that. And then if you get this down before your opponent really gets creatures down, then the bottom half of the effect of this card comes into super handy. So at the end of your opponent's turn, if your opponent controls one or more creatures, destroy the first opposing creature. If you do, destroy the support. If your opponent doesn't control a creature, they lose 6 life. So really what winds up happening with Wither Crown is because it has 3 shields, that's actually a fairly generous amount of shields for a common support. You get this thing down and your opponent's going to start losing 6 life a turn. Then, because Greg will always prioritize, Greg is the name of the AI, is always going to prioritize casting creatures first if they have creatures in hand. Greg is going to ultimately get a creature down, and then the Wither Crown is going to destroy itself to destroy your opponent's creature. Unless the opponent's creature has haste, then they're going to lose their creature before your turn comes up, and you don't even have to worry about it. If you're running Wither Crown with something like Karn or Starfield of Nyx, then you're just going to keep getting the Wither Crown back every time it destroys itself and just serve as continual removal for your opponent's stuff. So I really, really like this card. This is one of the better commons in the set. And yeah, that's really it, actually, for my chase list for Kaldheim. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't seen my other 2 videos on the chase list, go ahead and check them out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.